Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I am Kathryn Peterson here with my co-host Michael Regan, and we're going to do another fun coaching topic. And today we're going to talk about really what makes a strong sales leader. Michael made a great post about this on LinkedIn, and it spurred a conversation that we're going to talk about today. So with that, welcome in, Michael. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you because I feel like you coach so many great sales leaders.
Well, that is a true statement. So I guess maybe that's a good place to start our conversation. Is this is not meant to, divide people into corners of the room. It's really meant because you're right. I think I'm really blessed to get to work with some of the best sales professionals, at least in the mortgage side of the business, and a handful of them on the real estate side as well. So when we look at the housing industry as our place of work, you're right. I'm already working with really great sales leaders. But I think for our audience, if maybe the housing industry isn't your particular industry, maybe you're in a different vertical, I think you'll find some parallel lines here because some of these aspects of a good salesperson, a great salesperson, and a really great salesperson are going to be similar to what you experience in the world that you work in. So I'm really hoping, Kathryn, that we can draw some application across several verticals, and I'm excited to unpack it.
Yes, excited for this. Well, we talked a little bit about kind of going through some of the high level thoughts that you had. So let's maybe review those first.
Okay.
I'll read the first one. So good sales professionals sell benefits and features. So I actually remember we were in a roundtable and discussed this for quite a long time. So I know most people know what that means, but let's just quickly review that for people.
Yeah, I think if you've had any classic sales training, this is one of those this is one of the sessions in classic sales training is the benefits and features discussion. And to boil it down in its simplest terms, many of us get excited about the components of what we're selling. So if there's a product and that product has a certain feature to it, we want to focus on, ooh, look at this cool feature. And so the analogy we sometimes get is when we're buying a car, the salesperson might want to focus on, oh, all of these great features that you have, the way the stereo system is integrated with the wireless connections, the way the technology now manages the distance between you and the car in front of you, and while all those things are true, and there is certainly going to be someone out there who already did their research, they're a little bit of a nerd, and that's exactly what they came for. Most of the audience doesn't get that excited about the features. They get
Mhm.
excited about, well, how does that benefit me? And so instead of talking about wireless Bluetooth technology integration, maybe you talk about the ease of connecting your music in the car, the ease of having a hands-free conversation while you drive safely, the simplicity of being able to just power up your vehicle and press one button and everything just works. Those are benefits that sometimes work. So that's often the conversation that we get in let's call it sales training 101. And most of us that are in sales understand that if we only talk about features and we don't connect them with benefits, we miss the opportunity to get someone emotionally engaged. And I think most good salespeople know how to do this.
And that kind of leads into the second part, which is qualifying the opportunities and outcomes. So describe the difference between that, because I think that's the part that's harder for people to understand.
Yeah. Okay. So great bridge. If we think about the same framework, features and benefits, the qualifications and the for the opportunities and the outcomes are similar. If we just focus on, and let's now use our world of real estate that you and I know really well, instead of maybe talking about selling cars. If all we focus on is a loan application and the pre-qualification based on certain debt to income ratios or certain credit score qualifications, we're really focusing on all of these qualifications that define which opportunities you do and don't have. Again, those are necessary, but what people really want are the outcomes. Like based on what my credit is or based on what my debt to income ratio is, what are some of the outcomes that are possible? You and I got to discuss this with our friend Roy Michelle when he said nobody really wants a mortgage. They want those memories, they want those moments. That's, I think, where you level up from a good salesperson to a great salesperson is you understand, let's really connect with the heart of what you want. You really want the outcomes. You really want the home. You really want that opportunity to raise your family in the neighborhood you want to be in the school district you want to be in, whatever the outcomes might be. So yes, we have to qualify the opportunities based on some of those functional things, but if we don't connect those with the outcomes that they really want, we miss the opportunity, just like the features and benefits, to help them feel more emotionally engaged. So again, I think good salespeople are great with benefits and features, and then great salespeople really know how to connect those opportunities and those outcomes.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk about some skills that some great sales leaders might have. One of the things I really think about is the questions they ask and how they listen and connect. So let's talk through those a little bit more.
Well, you're moving into the territory where I think great salespeople become really great. And you and I are really blessed in this respect. We get to work with some of the best folks that win these awards at the end of the year for being like top 1% in the career that they've chosen to work in. And you start to ask yourself, okay, well, if everybody's not just good, they're probably great. How does somebody win these awards? I mean, everybody's talented. And by the way, talented, and they all have access to much of the exact same information. They have a
Mhm.
very similar mix of products. They have very similar guidelines, and frankly, their pricing is within a very small range of the same, just based on what their overhead model may or may not allow. So if everyone's similar, how do we separate the great ones? And I think you're on the right track. I think really great ones are willing to ask the questions that maybe lead to the deeper why. They're willing to go beyond just an exchange of yes and no answers. They're willing to go beyond just, oh, okay, now I know why, move along. They'll pause and say, ooh, that's interesting. Tell me about that. What's the story behind that? What's really driving that decision that made you want to even do that in the first place? Once you see people get really great at their ability to ask the right questions, I think you start to see that separation between a great salesperson and a really great salesperson. And that takes, you're right, that's a skill. That takes practice. You've got to be really committed to digging deeper because it takes a little bit more time to do it. And frankly, it gets a little bit scary when you walk into the land of, I don't know how they're going to answer that. And I don't know what's going to happen next.
Mhm.
That stepping into that danger is, I think, where the really great things happen.
And I want to bring up something that isn't necessarily on the list, but I think it's important,
Mm.
is I think good salespeople also feel the confidence to give good advice and maybe say some things that are uncomfortable. Like, hey, I know that this sounds like it's a little bit out of where you guys are comfortable. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what's going on in your head. Tell me what questions you guys are going to have once you leave here that we can kind of discuss today all together. So I think sometimes it's making those bold statements so that you can, or hey, I see that you're uncomfortable. Talk to me about that. Things like that that can really bring out some things that people will then be willing to say things. So it's not even just the questions. I think it's also the statements that strong salespeople can make that help people think differently through something so that you can address that up front.
Yeah, that's really good because you're right. Not everything is phrased as a question. Some things are phrased as a statement, and they both imply what you said, confidence. Do you have the confidence to
Mhm.
ask because you don't know the answer? Do you have the confidence to give advice because you know someone needs to push on this topic a little bit? And where does that come from, Catherine? In my mind, that comes from a deeper level of care. You have to genuinely care because if you don't care, why even bother asking? Why
Mhm.
make this potentially riskier by asking a question or making a bold statement? And maybe this thing starts to wobble a little bit. what would be the value of that? Well, if you're not confident, you're not going to do that. If you are confident, you already know the answer is this is where real trust gets established. This is what separates you from being a commodity in that world that we just said, where everything's same kind of different. They're all, they're all, everyone's offering something very similar. Well, if you're going to stand out, I think that's where your confidence really shines, is your ability to make that statement, to add that advice, or to ask that question. Those are all really good things. Um, another topic you and I've talked about on previous podcasts is the proliferation of AI into the world of sales. And you start to see this separation between the gradient pretty quickly when you bring AI topics up. Some people still think AI is automation. Like that's all that is. Oh, yeah, we automate certain things. Okay, maybe AI is playing a role in your automation, but you can tell there's a trepidation there. They're not really curious about it. In fact, maybe if you press on them, they're maybe a little bit nervous about it. They might think, "Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, this could be trying to come and take a piece of my job away." How do you feel about AI when you're thinking about good, great, and really great sales professionals? Where does AI fit in that gradient?
I think it's something that Kelly said a few weeks ago on our podcast, where really great salespeople are always having to learn, change, grow. And AI is no different. If somebody isn't willing to say, hey, I need to try new things, I need to adjust, I need to embrace things that other people are using successfully, I think every they're going to get behind. But I think that that's probably already a habit in most strong salespeople, depending. I mean, AI is a kind of a, can be a not controversial topic, but something that's just so big. But I think that most great salespeople really do, unless they have this little period of time that they're great for, they've learned to say, I'm always going to be out of my comfort zone, or most of the time I'm going to be out of my comfort zone. And so they get
Mhm.
really comfortable with being uncomfortable with new things.
That's a great phrase, getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable. I would agree with that. I think when I look at some of the wonderful people that I get to work with, there is a sense of that ability to get
Mhm.
comfortable being uncomfortable, which is usually where learning is happening. That's usually where you're checking your ego and you're willing to say, I might not know enough about that topic yet to be as confident as I want to be. So I'm going to go ask some questions. I'm going to go listen and learn. I'm going to maybe do some research. And once that happens, I think the outcome that I've seen most often is the really great sales professionals start to embrace the idea that a tool like AI might be helpful in leveling up my game rather than replacing my game. It actually might help me sort through some of the problems I'm currently having and really level up my ability to execute. Lori and I had this experience just recently. I don't want to credit her as being a really great sales professional, but it is a really great example of AI that I think will apply to a lot of our audience. She had a work project where she had been given a ton of information that had been organized in a spreadsheet, and someone had decided that the best way to now output this information from the spreadsheet were going to be on 3x5 cards, really old school tactical 3x5 cards. And my first reaction is, well, why would they want to do that? Well, as we looked through the application of what they were doing, there was some benefit to getting these on the cards. But now the question became, how do we do that? Like, how do we, I mean, is this just going to be a ton of cut and pasting? Like, has this turned into an art and craft project instead of into. And I said, well, why don't you upload your spreadsheet into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT how it would do it? And Catherine, within 5 minutes, it had formatted all of the cells that Lori had directed that information to go
Mhm.
into the 3x5 cards into a format that you could now literally send to a printer, run them through the paper chopper, and here are your 3x5 cards in exactly the format we needed. AI solved the problem in 5 minutes that 5 minutes before that was literally brain damage. These people were like, how do we do that? So it was an example of curiosity that led to something really great. And my hope is, as you hear that example, if you all are listening, is let's be curious about how tools like this work, because the really great salespeople I see today are willing to go ask that question and find out. Maybe you don't love the answer it gives you, but that doesn't mean it was not worth the pursuit. It may just mean maybe we need to ask a better question.
That's right. That's right. Yes. And it can adjust. So let's say you printed and it's printed incorrectly. You can say, oh, I forgot to tell you I'm using this kind of printer and I need 3x5 cards, not 4x6 cards. So it will adjust, which is good. Um, so so in the notes we had, you said if you're a good salesperson and still playing the numbers game, you'll be
Mm.
losing. But I don't really know what you meant by that. So can you
Ah,
explain that a little bit more?
yeah. Yeah. So we're living in a world right now, and this is in the context of what some of the larger sales organizations are doing. They are now taking what we used to call a numbers game in sales, which might have been related to how many phone calls you make based
Mm,
on how many people you get that will answer that call, based on how many people that answer that call will engage, based on how many people that engage will follow through, and you get the downhill flow from there. So there's almost a
yeah.
funneling of that information. And so you'll often get, again, if you go back to basic sales training, that'll sometimes be described as a numbers game. Basically, the more numbers you put in the top of that funnel, the
Hmm.
wider that funnel gets at its base. And I think for all of the sales history that we've known in the last 100 years, that's just been a very human process. If you can make more calls or more contacts, depending on the type of sales you're doing, maybe you're doing something that's a little more face to face, you get to determine the width of that funnel. Well, AI now is doing a lot of that work on the front end for these larger organizations. So if you're out there listening, you may already be well aware of this. But if you're not, let me just tell you some of the organizations that you might be competing with are designing bots to go out and find all of the names, make initial calls. They do it with AI voice technology. It sounds real. It is capable of having that initial conversation and therefore getting that funnel started before maybe a real human being finally is introduced into the equation. All that setup, the hunting and the finding is done through technology. And so if you're still playing that old school numbers game, I think you might be playing the wrong game. You might be playing a game that used to work because you weren't competing with anybody else except another human being. And so if you were willing to put your hustle muscle on and go out and do, another hour's worth of calls that they weren't willing to do, you could get a different set of results. Today, AI is going to be doing a lot of that. So you can either fight that, and there are some ways to fight that, by the way, but you can fight that. Or you can say, all right, how could I leverage that same technology? Is that reserved for really big companies, or are there some things I could do that might allow me to accelerate and still keep the personal touch? Because as you and I have discussed in previous episodes, not everybody wants to interact with AI technology. Some people really do value that you're a very real person that they can meet with in person. And so I think that's what I'm trying to imply is don't just assume that everything you always did is always going to work. It might be time to think more strategically, because if what you did before is now being done by an AI technology that you compete with, they're going to get there a lot faster than you are. And then what is your choice? Now your pool is a lot different. So we might want to think differently than we used to think. It may not be a numbers game anymore. It might be a strategy game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point to bring up. And I think that there's, I don't want people to be intimidated and say, well, I'm not doing that yet. I'm super behind. A lot of people aren't doing that yet, but it's good to be prepared for that moment when we can all utilize that. And the systems and technologies are out there and they will start to be utilized more and more. So I think it's good to know that this is coming and be prepared. But I don't want anybody to say, "Oh my gosh, because I'm not doing that, I'm not a great sales leader." I definitely don't want to give that impression out because part of being a sales leader is thinking through what's next and preparing for that today. So it brings up the farmer versus the hunter
Yeah.
episode a little bit,
Yeah.
which is kind of related, that what seeds are you planting today to be prepared for what's coming next spring, next summer, next fall? So,
Yeah. So I want to really capture the spirit of what you just said. You don't want people to feel like, uh-oh, I'm behind and the world is already passing me by.
mhm,
Here's the way I would ask us to wrestle with that is if we are trying to compete as humans with technology, that's going to be a difficult battle, whether you realize you're in that battle today or it's coming down the road tomorrow. It really doesn't matter what day you decide to wake up to that battle, that's going to be a tough battle.
mhm,
What that battle creates is a whole new wave of opportunity because, in the wake of a lot of this technological advancement, are a lot of people, the audience, the actual customers who might say, wait a minute, I'm not on board with that. I don't like that. I don't want to do all of that. So opportunity gets created in that. So yeah, the message for me is not,
mhm,
better hurry up and catch up with the machines. It's more of better hurry up and be aware of what the machines are capable of doing today, not in the future. They're doing right now, because the sooner we're awake to that, we can start asking questions like, so what new opportunities does that new technology create for me? Maybe there are pieces of it I want to leverage, but maybe I want to actually highlight the gaps it created. And I want to stand into that gap and let my audience know I'm willing to serve you in a way that you want to be served. I'm willing to engage with you in a way you want to be engaged.
mhm.
And that's where I mean, it's not a numbers game, it's a strategy game. You've really got to think differently about where your value proposition is in a world where a lot of these technologies aren't concept cars. These things are on the road today. I guess that was an analogy, but it's literally like saying there's a driverless car. Yes, Lori and I rode in them in San Francisco. They exist. I mean, the city of Phoenix has them. I think they're deploying them in Los Angeles next. This isn't the Jetsons. It's happening. And the same thing is happening, I think, for sales professionals is let's be aware of that. And then let's start asking the better questions is, okay, what opportunity does that create for me to serve an audience of people who might not be so thrilled to go down that road? And then are there pieces of it that if I was able to bring, they could get what they wanted from technology and still what they wanted from me? That's
Yeah,
a
that's
really great
great.
salesperson.
Yes. Thank you for summarizing that. I think that was perfect. And so I think from the coaching perspective,
Yeah.
you really dive into the mindset a lot. And we talked a little bit about this, but I think that that's a good kind of thing to wrap this topic up is, what do you see the mindset of a great sales leader or salesperson?
I actually think that's almost entirely what makes someone a really great sales professional. Because you already talked about confidence. Well, where does confidence come from? Usually, confidence, if it's not coming from arrogance and some sort of ego problem, it's coming from information. Once I know some information that I didn't know, I start to be more confident. And once I realize that information is really valuable to someone else and I can help connect that information with them and serve them in a unique way because they're looking for it, I start to gain more confidence. All that comes from mindset. It's the mindset of if I'm willing to learn, if I'm willing to grow, if I don't close my mind off to the idea that I already know everything I need to know, I already understand everything about the world that I operate in. The really great sales professionals that I see are the ones who are regularly looking for new ways to solve old problems, and that's all mindset. Um, I don't want to minimize tool sets or skill sets. I mean, you
Mhm.
do need some good tools. I think it's pretty hard to compete in a digital world if you're out there with a yellow pad and a pen. Doesn't mean you can't do the literal work. It just means like your capacity is going to be limited. So, yes, you're probably going to need a certain level of tool set. And same with skill set. You're going to need to understand how to do certain things, how to move effortlessly, not just with your tools, but maybe in your communication of connecting those with the audience. But both of those combined are still a distant from mindset. I mean, mindset is so much more important because you've got to actually believe that you have this gift, you have this ability, you have this opportunity, and there's an audience out there who actually will benefit from getting to work with you. That's where I see really great salespeople thrive. It always comes back to mindset. So if you're struggling right now in any way, meaning you're starting to worry that, oh my gosh, the world is passing me by, or oh my gosh, I've been doing this too long, or oh my gosh, I'm getting bored, or even worse, I'm getting cranky. This just isn't fun anymore. You meet folks that struggle.
Yeah.
Take a breather. All of us understand that. That's a very normal human feeling to have. So take a breather and recognize that what you might just need is a reset. You might need some refreshment. And there's some ways we can unpack that, Kathryn, in a future episode, because I think there are lots of things we can do to help
Yeah.
someone reset and reframe some of those things. But if your mindset is in a place where you truly believe in who you are and what you do and why you do it, and that there's a world out there that needs it and you can help them, I, I think you can quickly learn skills. You can quickly embrace tools and you can help a lot of people. Really great salespeople have a really great mindset.
Thanks, Michael. This has been it's funny because sometimes I see the topic and I think, oh man, that's gonna be a fast one. And then by the time we talk about it, I'm like, that was really good and really interesting. We went way more in depth. So I'm hoping that the audience feels that way as well, because it is amazing um, how many little pieces and parts are involved with the job that we do every day, whether that be that you're in mortgage or real estate or a different industry. We're all really salespeople in one way or another. So hopefully this episode has been helpful for everybody listening. Michael, any closing thoughts around this topic?
Yeah, I'll just say this, Kathryn. If today this was helpful for you in recognizing that you're already a good salesperson and you might even be a great salesperson, but you want to be a really great salesperson, the next level up for you might simply be removing some things that are affecting your mindset. Maybe it's, people that are pulling you down. Maybe it's the media that you're following that's bumming you out. Maybe it's your schedule is too full of trivial, mundane things, and so you don't have a lot of space in your calendar. I'm not trying to solve a problem quickly here. I'm trying to encourage folks to realize you might be dangerously close to that next level. And I want to help encourage you that today, embrace that growth mindset and figure out what you might be able to learn this fall that would help elevate you to be really great, because there's a world out there waiting for you to help them.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to close out this episode. You've been listening to Building Bigger Lives. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and please like and share. We would love to hear your comments on episodes and what you've learned. So please reach out. Thanks again for joining us today.